And now for a closer look at what's playing itself out in that market scene is Greg Katzenellenbogen from Sanlam Private Wealth. Greg, always a pleasure. A pinch and a punch to you, Greg.
Yeah, pinch and a punch first of the month.
Wonderful, Greg. It does look like we've started the week off on quite a positive note. I'm just keen to get your thoughts on, moving out of last week into this week and what might be, on the minds of our traders today.
Well, so a number of things. First of all, in Europe this morning, the fact that neither the extreme right or the extreme left was able to secure a majority in the French elections, although President Macron's party is in third place. But the market took some comfort from that, and so there won't be any French exit from the European Union, and the Paris market is up quite strongly, and the euro is doing quite well. And then, of course, late last night when we had the confirmation that a deal had been done with the Government of National Unity, as soon as the foreign exchange markets opened, you could see that the rand improved quite strongly, trading around the 1805 mark at the moment. But people have taken comfort that the DA is still in the GNU, and that hopefully that this Government of National Unity will actually start getting South Africa's growth rate up, and the economy would start recovering. And I think that's why you've seen, the markets, the South African markets, besides the financials, just broadly across the market, up about 2/3 of 1%. And traders taking some comfort that things will be a lot better in South Africa. But of course, it's early days, and proof is in the pudding, as they say. But certainly the sentiment has improved a lot, and people believe that probably South Africa's, we've seen the bottom of our economic cycle, and it can only get better from here. And the markets are a forward-looking instrument, and so probably thinking that's what will happen, that things will improve.
Also keen to find out, Greg, when we see some of these SA Inc. rallies, we often see resources being left behind. I'm wondering what is happening with the resources and commodities story at this point.
No, well, look, if you leave out, obviously some of the resources stocks are down, and that's because of the translation in the currency. A lot of these stocks, Anglo and BHP, the prices are made out of London. So it's just, when the rand is strong like that, it affects the translation price in South Africa. But the overall outlook for commodities still remains good, copper particularly. And but of course, it's just a question of the currency translation. But if the outlook for commodity does remain strong, as I think it will do, then you should get the dollar price of the commodity going up, and that would certainly help the whole complex. But when the rand is strong like this, it doesn't help the South African price in commodities.
Also keen to get your thoughts on what we might see in the U.S. inflation picture. Always watching that one. We are expecting jobs data out later on this week. Greg, any thoughts and expectations there? But also this week, we are expecting some commentary coming out of Jerome Powell. I know he's in Europe for the annual forum of the ECB, and even seeing the divergence between the trajectory of the ECB and the Fed at this point.
Well, I think that we're still going to get an interest rate cut in America. Inflation, all the data that the Fed looks at, is starting to trend lower, and that's positive for the outlook for inflation. The US economy also, it's been on a tear, and it's been extremely strong. That is showing signs of slowing down at the moment. And you're starting to see talk being raised now that towards the end of the year or early 2025, that you'll start to see maybe the US go into recession. All that must be focusing the Fed's minds. And I think that we must be close to an interest rate cut, if not two, at least one this year. But, Europe was generally waiting for the Fed to cut first, but they didn't do that. So Europe decided they would go ahead with a cut, although Christine Lagarde did warn that it's not to be taken as a signal that there are further interest rate cuts, that all data dependent on inflation. But in America, the bottom line is that inflation has started to trend downwards, and the economy has started to soften somewhat. So it makes it more likely that the Fed will cut interest rates.
And us here at home, Greg, now that we are seeing a stronger rand with the government of national unity coming into place, can we expect that to lead to some sustainability and maybe just better inflation outcomes for us and possibly cuts for us in the next few months?
Well, we would hope that. I think the economy does need a cut to get things going, although you would have seen that the governor of the Reserve Bank is questioning whether our inflation target is not too high, and saying that it should be, we should lower the inflation target. So I'm not sure that they will be in a rush to cut. But they've managed to keep inflation within their 3 to 6% band, so they've done exceptionally well, and that's been a positive for South Africa, is that the Reserve Bank has been independent in terms of setting monetary policy. But I think the economy does need a kickstart, and if it does do that, we have to be, if economic growth starts to recover strongly, inflation then would go up, so that the Reserve Bank will be, loath to cut rates to a certain extent where it will give a massive boost to the economy. They still will focus on inflation. But I think the economy can do with at least a 25 basis point cut in the next couple of months.
Greg, I must also ask you about China and your thoughts on that part of the world, also an important one for us here in South Africa. We are seeing PMIs declining slightly there. This recovery picture, of course, we've been speaking about it for quite a while, but China is still in recovery.
But China's very much in recovery, and it's a long, slow process. We've seen over the weekend also data out of the property sector that the Chinese recovery is taking much longer. People have been waiting for more than a year now for the Chinese government to bring a big bazooka in terms of stimulus. They have been very loath to do that. They're trying to focus more on building the company up in getting a technological advance on other countries, while still maintaining their massive export drive. But the fact remains that the Chinese economy is taking a lot longer to recover, and the Chinese consumer as well has sort of reined in their spending somewhat. So I think that it might be some time still, but I think that it will be inevitable that the Chinese government will have to start increasing its stimulus if they want to get that economy going. It's going to be interesting when their next GDP figures come out, because they've targeted 5% for this year. But if the economy carries on like this, they might struggle to get that 5% number.
Certainly one worth watching, Greg. I want to get your stock pick in a bit, but first, let's take a look at counters that have found favor with industry peers.
I chose on Wednesday Costco, and I still like it. I still think it's the one company that I'm doing a lot more investigating. We used to ignore it, as I said on Wednesday. I said we used to ignore it because of Amazon and because of Walmart, which are much bigger businesses. But this was Charlie Munger's favorite business. He was on their board for a long time. And when you go into their business models like Macro, you become a member. And by buying a membership, you're allowed to buy there. But they use that membership money to get better deals for you. And they stock a lot less than, say, a Walmart, which gives them better bargaining power. But very solid results. And they just, the last year or two, they've just suddenly started to capture people's imagination.
Picking Novartis, they just did a deal earlier this year with Alphabet/Google, again around AI. Google has a program called AlphaFold 3 that allows you to develop drugs more easily, etc. And I think if you start seeing AI being applied to drug formation, you could have a whole new market being created that wasn't available, say, a couple of years ago. and the companies that have deals with them, like Eli Lilly and Novartis, are probably going to be successful or be more successful. And just to be aware, yes, Google is neck and neck with OpenAI and Anthropic, etc. when it comes to LLMs. Nobody's close to Google when it comes to things like AlphaFold and pharmaceuticals and so on.
All right, Greg, keen to get your thoughts on some of those. We have Costco as well as Novartis.
Well, I like both those stocks. Look, Costco, if you look at the staples sector in the United States over sort of year to date, there's only really two stocks in that universe that have been outperforming the S&P 500, and one of which is Costco. The other one is Walmart, very much in the same business. But, Costco is, they've got it's a membership fee, as David said, got 129 odd million members that pay anything between $60 and $120 per annum to be a member of the club. And they have a famous, for like the last 20, 30 years, you can buy a hot dog and a soda or a Coke there for $1.50, and that has never changed. And it's a big attraction for people in the economy. But I think that Costco is a very good stock. And also, if it's true that things are slowing down quite considerably in the US economy and that we might get a recession later this year or early next year, then stocks like these, because their pricing is so good, will continue to do well as well. And I think that they'll continue, the share price will continue to outperform. For Novartis, that's also a very good stock. They've, in their cancer treatment, the big thing was in their treatment of prostate cancer, where they've managed to get their drug to actually just target the prostate cells and not damage the cells around the prostate. That's been a big big benefit for them, and in the fight against prostate cancer, and that their sales of that drug have soared enormously. And then also one of their drugs for fighting inflammation, something like sales are up 25-26%. Year on year. So Novartis also remains a good quality stock.
Well, that's it, Greg. Which counter are you loving this afternoon?
Well, because of all the optimism in South Africa and the fact that after many years of waiting, that we might finally start to see improved economic growth in South Africa. I've gone for Bidvest, which is a diversified company, and it's very involved right across the South African economy. They've got automotive, commercial products, they've got financial services, they've got South African services, some offshore services, branded products. So if the South African economy is going to start performing exceptionally well now over the next couple of years, Bidvest has to be the one stock that will reflect that.
Wonderful, Greg. Thank you so much for getting the week and the month going for us today. That was your Midday Markets Update with Sanlam's Greg Katzenellenbogen.